Ladies and gentlemen, a conversation with Chairman of the House Committee, Devin Nunes, and ACU Chairman Matt Schlapp.
Very nice.
Very nice job. Thanks a lot.
I don't know, Mr. Chairman. I think they like you.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks for the warm welcome. I really appreciate it.
You've been a longtime friend and a longtime friend of the conservative movement. You're getting another award from us for your congressional votes, but I think what people most respect and know about you recently is your courage in standing up to what looks to be a very troublesome set of facts. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Matt.
Now, in these days, it seems like news is breaking all the time, and I think it's important for all of our CPAC attendees to know that there's news breaking literally right now with the release of this Schiff memo. Our attendees are going to hear from you first. What do they need to know about what's going on and about the release of this memo?
Well, thank you, and it just posted, so for those of you, the website probably crashed, so probably nobody can actually get it right now. Russian bots again, I'm sure, caused it to crash. I would say that we actually wanted this out, so this has been held up for over 2 weeks. The FBI and DOJ had right away told the Democrats what was wrong with their memo or their response to our memo, and they waited for 2 weeks before they actually did the redactions that were necessary to get this out. We wanted it out. We want it out because we think it is clear evidence that the Democrats are not only trying to cover this up, but they're also colluding with parts of the government to help cover this up. And I think as you read it, you will see personal attacks on myself, personal attacks on Chairman Gowdy, with a lot of really interesting things that sound really bad, like a lot that has been happening with this Russia investigation over the course of the last year. But what you're not going to see is anything that actually rejects what was in our memo. And what was the point of our memo? The point of our memo was for one purpose only, and that was to show that FISA abuse had occurred. And to have a secret court that gets abused like this is totally unacceptable, and it falls on the job of the legislative branch who created all of this to provide oversight to make sure when we see problems that we let the American people know and all of our congressional colleagues know. So what you basically will read in the Democratic memo is they are advocating that it's okay for the FBI and DOJ to use political dirt paid for by one campaign and use it against the other campaign. And I don't care who you are, a Republican, a Democrat, or an independent, in the United States of America, that is unacceptable.
So you got two issues there. Let's unpack this a little bit. You got the fact that, as you call it, FISA abuse, the abuse of this sacred trust we put in our government to actually have the power to look in the most intimate areas of our life. You have abuse of that, number one, and then you have this question, it's a bold charge of a cover-up, covering up the fact that that ever happened, or explaining it in a way that doesn't really give clarity to the American people.
Well, let me give you an example.
Fair?
Let me give you an example of cover-up. So one of the things in the Democratic memo that they're all hot to talk about is that in a footnote before the FISA court, they had put in a very convoluted, complicated answer for something that was, and it's buried at the end, okay, of the application, about that this was politically motivated. And you guys will all be able to read it shortly. However, wouldn't it have been a lot easier just to say, hey, Mr. Judge, we want to let you know that the Hillary Clinton campaign and the Democratic Party paid a lawyer who hired a firm who hired a foreign agent to go to the Russians and get dirt on Mr. Trump. It would have been a lot easier just to say that. And we are not going to have a FISA court in this country any longer if the FBI and DOJ are going to continue to obfuscate like that.
Well, I can speak from some experience here after 9/11. Some of these extra steps were taken to give the federal government greater powers and leeway to fight terrorism, to fight our enemies. And we were all told, when people said, well, what if anybody ever misused this? What if somebody used it for their own personal gains? And I remember the answers, even in the corridors of the previous Republican administration, which is there'll be so many safeguards that no one could ever use it in a way that would be separate from our national security. Do we just not have these safeguards?
Well, let's make one thing clear. This is our ability to track down terrorists and bring them to justice is critically important, and so is this court.
Yeah.
So is this court. What I believe happened, if we can get we're conducting an investigation. Ultimately, there's going to have to be an investigation done by somebody over DOJ and FBI who can look at it all. And in that investigation, they're going to have to determine whether or not there was abuse or not, whether or not the law needs to be changed, and also holding people accountable that did this abuse. And until that happens, I think you're going to see a very skeptical Congress as it relates to what can or cannot be brought before this court.
The one question I think a lot of us have, because you have been, as I said, courageous, you have stepped up. Now, it's partly due because of this really important role you have to be the chair of the House Intelligence Committee. This is one of the most important jobs in Congress. Usually it doesn't get a lot of press. Usually it doesn't get a lot of attention. What was the first thing that caused you to really go after this and to really go after the truth? What was the flag? What was the trigger?
Well, there were a lot of flags. I will say the first flag is, well, let me back up just a few minutes on this.
Because that was like a year ago, over a year ago?
Well, let me tell you what, on the House Intelligence Committee, we prefer to stay out of the press, at least the Republicans do. We would prefer to just be down in the basement, helping out the intelligence agencies, only making appearances when there is an issue of national emergency where we need to go out and talk about whatever it is the American people and the Congress need to know. That was traditionally how we did our work. So let's talk about Russia. So in 2013 and 14 and 15, the Republicans had been warning the Obama administration that Russia was a problem and Putin was a problem. And not only that, this was an administration who, a lot of people are talking about what is this administration, the current Trump administration, doing against the Russian threat. Well, let's talk about what the Obama administration did with their reset policy that actually created and emboldened Putin to be in a position to be such a threat. So just a few facts that people forget. One, we went through we did a reset, we hit a reset button with Hillary Clinton. Then we said that we were going to pivot to Asia because we were going to be friends with the Russians. We went through a whole European infrastructure consolidation process of our military installations across Europe. We abandoned a lot of our capability in the North Atlantic in order to track Russian subs. We actually had the President of the United States who said on a hot mic to the Prime Minister of Russia at the time, didn't know the mic was hot, and said, hey, just tell Vladimir that I have to wait till after the election. That was the President Obama who said that. At the same time, Mitt Romney in 2012 said that Russia was a grave threat, and President Obama had that great line. It was really funny at the time. All the media laughed about it, made fun of Romney, that the 80s wanted their foreign policy back, something like that. Everybody laughed. So who created this Russian threat? It was the last administration who put us in this position. But here's the kicker to all of this. It culminated finally with great frustration on my part, where in April of 2016, just months before the election, I came out and said on national television that the biggest intelligence failure since 9/11 was our failure to understand Putin's plans and intentions. This was in April of 2016. And then all of a sudden, so now fast forwarding, what were the signs that there could be a problem? Was by late summer, when I had people in the administration coming to me and saying, well, you know, we could have a problem with the Russians. Oh, thank you. We've been saying that now for 4 years. Glad you guys finally figured it out. Then, after the presidential election, President Trump is elected. A couple days later, I was asked to serve on the transition team. It was at that point where I began getting accused by all sorts of mediums and platforms that I was some sort of secret Russian agent. And now, if you would have told me of anybody in the Congress that's going to get accused of being a Russian agent, I would have been down towards the bottom of the list after you listed all of the Democrats in Congress. And now today, the media and the Democrats would have you believe, the Democratic-controlled media, because basically it's one and the same. I mean, they would have you believe that I'm like working with, you know, with the Kremlin. I mean, this is total nonsense. So I said, look, we'll conduct an investigation. If we see collusion, I've seen no evidence of collusion. We've still seen no evidence of collusion. I was targeted.
We've seen no evidence of
Republicans colluding. That's correct.
Is that fair?
Yeah, that's very fair. So all of this that's happened over the course of the last year and a half, it really is quite something to be a part of, to be in the center of. And I will tell you that the American people deserve to know the truth, and the House Intelligence Committee will continue to plod through our work with or without the support of the media, and we'll get the facts.
So, good. So the bigger the Democrats and their allies in the national media make the charge about Russian interference, which I know we all find repugnant in our election or in our society generally, the bigger they make the charge that there was apparently something untoward about Trump and Russian collusion, it's important for all of us to remember they are indicting the Obama administration. The Obama administration did not keep us safe. Instead, they took the information and used it to go after Team Trump. Is that a fair statement?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think there's clear evidence of collusion, and you alluded to it. The only evidence we have of collusion, which is not, I mean, it's not even, it's clear evidence. It's not even circumstantial. Now, people try to get around it by saying, well, it was really a law firm that was hired to another guy. Well, wait a second. This was money from the Hillary campaign and the Democratic Party making its way into the hands of an agent who was either paying Russian agents or getting information from Russian agents that was dirt on the Trump campaign that then, of course, they used later. But it's clear evidence of collusion. There's nothing that's any clearer than that. And you would think that somebody might want to do some research on that and figure out who really was colluding with the Russians. What are these contacts?
Well, you're the one who's asked these questions, right? Mm-hmm. You sent out a series of questions to some former officials.
Right.
Do you expect to get answers?
Well, that's the next stage of our investigation. So earlier this week, and the media still hasn't reported on this, at least the
Tell us about it, because we're glad you did this.
So earlier this week, we sent a questionnaire to what will likely be a couple dozen current and former members of the executive branch that ask very simple, straightforward questions like, when did you first learn of the dossier? When did you learn that the Democrats in the Hillary campaign had paid for the dossier? Did you brief President Obama on this? These are all questions. There's 10 simple questions. We hope that by the end of the week, next week, that we will have the answers, but I'm not going to I'm not going to hold my breath for those answers.
So we have this term, cover-up. I keep thinking, I guess I turned 50 this year, so I feel older. And I think about when I was told about Watergate. And, there's all these terms out there that came out of that investigation. It seems like when there's a Republican president, it sure seems like there is a lot of investigating. I don't know if that's just a coincidence or not. But is it fair to ask, what did President Obama know? When was he briefed? Were they briefing him after the fact? Mm-hmm. Were they told to do things because they got direction from the White House? These are the questions that you're trying to get to with your question, the answers you're trying to get to with these questions.
Right. I mean, we need to know all of the officials at the time when they knew about this, because no matter as we move forward, we will get through this as a country, but we have to make sure that people are held accountable so that everyone knows that it's never going to be okay to take dirt from a foreign actor that was essentially made up out of whole cloth and then used against the other campaign. No matter whose campaign that is, we just can't allow that to happen again.
There's a lot of people in here. When you walk down the halls of CPAC, you run into so many retired military, retired law enforcement. There's so many great people that work at the Department of Justice and work at the FBI, but it's hard to not read all the coverage of this and not feel like they've been tarnished by this politicization of these agencies. What do we do and what do they do to kind of fix this and get us back on the right track?
Well, I always like to say that the first thing you have to do is admit that you have a problem.
Right.
Now, that would be a good start. And I think once that begins to happen, then you will start to see the types of reforms that are needed. But I want to stress that it's just at the top, right? We don't have any evidence that anybody down below in your local field office was playing politics, at a level that's unprecedented. We don't see that. So it's going to have to be Christopher Wray, the new director, is going to have to take this upon himself to make sure he gives confidence to the American people.
And you're hopeful this can happen?
Well, if not, we're there to oversee it.
Yeah, that's right.
To try to make it.
That's right. So at the beginning of this process a year ago, they did something we call in Kansas, they tried to hog tie you. They tried, as soon as you were making progress and you were going after the truth, people started leveling charges about you in order to stop you.
Right.
Why has our politics turned into that?
Yeah, and I actually think this is a good example of what you've really seen is the collapse of the media. And I think it's really sad, right? I mean, I think all of us have known that most in the media are left, but for the most part, we tolerated it because you had people who had certain standards, right, that you could count on, that they would at least be fair. So I always like to, thanks for asking the question, because a lot of people don't really understand what happened last spring when I went to the White House. And I like to say it real simple like this. One, when I got the information, I briefed the Republicans on the committee. The Democrats don't like to hear this. I didn't brief them because I knew they would run to the press and talk about it. But right after that, I went out to the media, held a press conference, totally transparent, and said, I'm going to the White House because I found this information where there was unmaskings that occurred on Trump transition officials, and the president needs to know about this. I told the media this. Went to the White House, briefed the president. Outside of the White House, went and briefed the White House press corps again. Now, what do I get accused of? Not being transparent. That was, I think, the height of hypocrisy. And I think what you've seen now is, I think most Americans are understanding that no matter where you're getting your news from, it's going to be biased. And I don't know how that's going to be fixed. It's not going to be fixed in the short run. In the long run, it may get fixed, but in the meantime, you've got billionaires that are controlling most of the media outlets that have their own agendas. You have a press now that's totally reliant on clicks, so they have to have certain things like clickbait, which I like to say, or my friends like to tell me I'm now clickbait for the mainstream media. So, you know, when you put stories out there just to get clicks, I think you're going to see a degradation in the quality of reporting. And that's really what's happened. I mean, just going back just to finish on this point, how is it possible, we talked a little bit about the questionnaire that we sent out, and no one in the mainstream media has covered it. No one. How is that possible?
Yeah, well, maybe part of the reason it's possible, as I was reading and watching, is recently there's this show called Morning Joe.
I hear they're big fans of mine.
Yeah, big fans of yours.
Yeah.
And they had someone on recently who was mocking you and your intelligence and your abilities because you're a dairy farmer.
Yeah.
And because people like the people I come from in Kansas who work the land and are farmers and ranchers, they're somehow not able to handle the complex issues that the Intelligence Committee has to undertake. I'd like to give you some equal time on the CPAC stage.
Well, I would say this is why President Trump won the election, because Middle America was ignored for way too long, and the power centers of New York, Washington, D.C., a few of the big cities, and then, of course, Hollywood and San Francisco in my neck of the woods, was the people all in the middle were considered irrelevant. You know, it's not just farmers.
And stupid.
It's not stupid or incompetent, and not knowing what everybody knows in the Beltway or the Acela corridor, as they like to say in Washington. It's more than that. They actually despise people who are mechanics and truck drivers and people who are builders and get their hands dirty. And I always like to say, if we didn't have these people, well, not only would we not have any shelter and energy to keep us warm or cool in the respective season, we wouldn't have any food to eat. And and I come from the agricultural mecca of the world in the San Joaquin Valley, and I always like to say that we've been dealing with these crazy people for a long time. You guys are just now learning what we've been dealing with in the San Joaquin Valley. I grew up with this lunacy that comes from Hollywood and San Francisco. It's kind of the home of the extreme left wing. And so we've seen what they do to people's private property, what they do to their farms, what they do to their businesses. And so we're well aware. And so a lot of people ask me, well, how do you deal with this? I'm like, well, I grew up with it. I kind of know. I'm used to these people. I'm used to being attacked all the time. And so are my constituents. And so I hope you all know that in California, it's like a country in and of itself. And don't hold that against like some of us who are actually conservative, who are actually trying to do the right thing and trying to be good participants in this great country.
I love that answer. Where do our attendees go to get this shift memo?
It should be online on the House Intelligence Committee website.
So we're going to forgive you if you're looking at your phones or looking at Twitter to read the contents, because I think it's important for you all to know what's happening. And I think it's also important for you all to know that we're going to do something very special for you, Mr. Chairman. And with that, I'd like to bring onto the stage Millie Hallow, our ACUF Vice Chairman. Millie, could you come out and join us? And we have a very special presentation for Chairman Nunes. Come on out, Millie. Come on.
Boy, that was a great conversation. It was very candid, Chairman. So,
I tend to be that way.
Yes,
Yeah.
So I've heard. So I've heard. We're so pleased to have had you as our distinguished closing speaker. And now, we're really honored to bestow you with the American Conservative Union Defender of Freedom Award.
Very kind of you.
Yeah, very good. Very good.
Thank you.
Well,
It's very kind.
very good. Chairman, unlike other awards that are given at CPAC, this one is only given when an individual has shown concerted courage, standing up for truth and freedom under intense duress. Intense duress. And you know, when we've considered awardees for this honor, one of the questions we ask is, what would Ronald Reagan have done or said? And you, sir, in your unwavering valor and often lonely pursuit of truth on behalf of the American people, have stood out among your more timorous colleagues. So we respect you, we salute you, we thank you in your principled humility and your rigorous pursuit of truth for the American people.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I just want to say, if I may, thank you all very much. But as you all know, we represent, all of us that are in Congress, we represent constituents. And you know, I get this not because of all of you and all the things that I've done, but it's because of the people who allow me to do that. And so I just want to say thank you again to all of you, but especially to my constituents who send me back to Washington, and the people of San Joaquin Valley, who, as I said just a little earlier, we've been on the front lines of this fight. And so it's really an honor for our region of California to be recognized. And thank you so much for this award.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thanks, man. Thank you.
It's an honor.
Thank you very much.
I can't think of a more appropriate way to say thank you to all of you and to end CPAC 2018 with rewarding a man of courage who stands for our freedom. Thank you all so much.
Hey, Matt, February 27th.
It's been and I just got more breaking news. CPAC 2019 will be February 27th through March 2nd. And my prayer is we won't be talking about anything you're having to deal with by then. And we hope you'll all come back and join us. Thank you so much. God bless. We'll see you again next year. Thank you.